Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast, your home for Pittsburgh Penguins news and analysis. You can find us on YouTube at Tip of the Ice-Burgh. Make sure that you like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff, or you can catch us anywhere you get your podcast from. I'm your host, Nick Belsky, joined as always by Nick Horwat, and we have a phenomenal show for you guys today. First and foremost, we are going to discuss the potential reason for the Pittsburgh Penguins goaltending swap that we saw on Monday afternoon. Then we will react to the Penguins' second bit of news from Monday when they signed their electric defensive prospect, and a little update on when you could see him coming to Pennsylvania in the near future. And then we'll close things out by breaking down all of the news that came out on Monday surrounding the Pittsburgh Penguins as trade deadline week kicked off with a bang. Let's get started on the Tip of the Ice-Burgh. And let's kick things off with the big news. Tristan Jarry is back. This is not a drill. This is not a farce. This is not a lie. Tristan Jarry has joined the Pittsburgh Penguins on their road trip out west. Blomqvist has been returned to the American Hockey League's Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins. It has been a rough go of it for both of these goaltenders since they last swapped back on January 16th. Blomqvist had a 1-4-1 record in that time and an .854 save percentage. Meanwhile, Tristan Jarry down at the American Hockey League, 2-4-1 record with an .896 save percentage. So that last swap didn't result in positive play from either of them, really. So the question that I have for you, Horwat, and this is something I speculated upon a little bit yesterday, but I want to dive deeper into today is, do you believe this is a true swap? This is a true move that they're making to get Blomqvist back on his feet and to just simply bring up Tristan Jarry and see what he has? Or is it simply the Pittsburgh Penguins making sure that Yoel Blomqvist is eligible for the Calder Cup playoffs?
Ooh, I didn't even think of that angle. Because truthfully, in my heart of hearts, I think what do the Penguins have to lose with Tristan Jarry coming back up? Now, I like the idea of sending Blomqvist back down to continue developing at the AHL level, and then maybe just sort of getting that AHL playoff run under him. Like I said last episode, getting that playoff run under him and then getting ready for next season at the NHL level. What do the Penguins have to lose by recalling Jarry if he's not at his best, by the way? Truthfully, the season is just about set in stone that it's over. They're selling off. They are trying to build for the future. And with Jarry in net, I mean, Jarry's record at the A didn't sound good. His last outing there, he blew a 3-goal lead. You don't see NHL level goalies get recalled back to the NHL after blowing a 3-goal lead in the A. So I think it wasn't so much of a move of Jarry earned his way back. I think it was more a move of Blomqvist isn't doing it at the NHL right now. We can't sewer his development. Send him back. What do the Penguins have to lose? We're going to just carry on this losing season with Jarry in net. And plus, it's not like, obviously Blomqvist isn't playing well. It's not like Nedeljkovic is playing good either. This is all three of them at the NHL level right now, not playing well. So with the deadline coming up and players needing to be on certain rosters for certain things, by all means, make sure that happens. And then just make sure that happens, because what do the Penguins have to lose? Send Bemstrom back down to make sure he's on that roster. Send everyone else back down so they're set for that, because that's the team in the Penguins organization that has the most to gain right now. So build up for that the best way you can.
Yeah, and for those who are unaware, for players to be eligible, at least players going from the NHL to the AHL, for them to be eligible for the American Hockey League Calder Cup playoffs, they have to be on the AHL roster at NHL trade deadline day. So in my eyes, when I look at this and I say the move was made on Monday, the Penguins went out west yesterday. If you're going to have Yoel Blomqvist on the AHL roster, why wouldn't you just leave him back in Pennsylvania and let Tristan Jarry come up and travel out west and be the backup on tonight against Colorado, and then on Friday against Vegas, and then next Monday against Minnesota? It's a 3-game trip. It's a 1-week trip. And if that's the case, you get Blomqvist on the AHL roster and you get him the opportunity to potentially be an option for them in the playoffs. That way they can run Larson Blomqvist instead of running Larson Jarry, which does absolutely nothing for the future of the franchise. So I feel like there is I think likely chance. I was going to say non-zero. I think it is more than 50% that this is the reason that they did that. I mean, that's the exact same thing that they did with Valtteri Puustinen last year. The only difference is they were playing home games right around the trade deadline, so they could send him down and bring him back up in the same day on the trade deadline last year, which is what they did. Whereas this year, I mean, they play Friday night. Like, you don't want to have both guys out there and say, all right, well, we're going to play who's on the actual roster with you guys right now. So I think that there's a chance that the Penguins are simply sitting there saying, we want to make sure that Blomqvist is eligible for the AHL playoffs, which kick off on April 23rd after the Penguin season will be done, versus, hey, we need to send him down. Because I still feel that the best way for Joel Blomqvist to develop is to see the NHL action in front of him. I think that there's not a lot kind of mechanic wise that he needs to work on. A lot of it is literally just he needs to catch up to the speed of the NHL game. Like, look at that game on Sunday. A lot of those mistakes in the first period are just him not being ready for shots on goal. The Austin Matthews goal being chief among them. Not many people, if any people in the AHL, can get a shot off that quickly and that accurately to the 5-hole. Same thing goes with the first goal. He didn't expect the forecheck to be in on him as quick as it was. It's because he hasn't adjusted to the NHL speed yet. And I think that's still what needs to happen. Not to mention, I have no interest, and I have a hard time believing that the Pittsburgh Penguins organization has any interest in seeing what Tristan Jarry has this season anymore. He's been a backup at the AHL level, for Christ's sake. So there is a chance that I'm off base with my theory, and the Penguins are sending Blomqvist down simply because they want him to kind of reset at the American Hockey League level, because it has been a rough go of it since he came up in mid-January. But if that's the case, man, that is waving the white flag. And we always say players don't tank, coaches don't tank, general managers do. And if they are bringing Tristan Jarry up to play any amount of hockey, to me, that is waving the white flag and saying, let's see how close we can get to one of those top 4 picks, if not top 3, or maybe even, shoot, I'm saying there's a chance, maybe in even that first overall selection.
There's absolutely that chance. There's absolutely that chance the lottery balls fall the right way. Again, the lottery balls are what set this franchise forward for the last 2 decades. I'm not saying the lottery balls this year specifically are going to set the franchise forward another 2 decades, but they fall the right way. Maybe they're getting one of those top picks. Maybe they're even just sitting there already. And whenever it comes down to it, because again, you're right, playing Jarry for any amount of time is just revving up the engine to the tank. It really is. Calling him back up is putting the keys in the ignition. Like, this is all really getting started. It's trade deadline week. Everyone is tired. The Penguins look tired. The only people that are going to be trying their best, truthfully, might be Crosby and Malkin. The players are going to
believe that. I think players don't tank. And I think a lot of these players, like Tomasino I talked about yesterday, they're playing for something. They are playing for opportunity, whether it's with Pittsburgh or somewhere else.
That's fair. Yeah. Because, I mean, yeah, everyone's saying the Raquel trade might happen in the summer. Yeah, he keeps on this pace, though. Someone desperate enough will come along. LA's looking for scoring, and they know him pretty well from being on the opposite end of it for quite a few years. Teams could come along and take up a Blake Lizotte. The Karlsson's unlikely in the next 3 days. But it's the end of the road for a lot of people in Pittsburgh. And just, you're right. Maybe I shouldn't have said that Crosby and Malkin will be the only ones giving an effort, but it is at the point of the tanks are revving up. Kyle Dubas is putting out the team that he's putting out. Mike Sullivan is doing all that he can with this team. We'll see where it goes. It's regardless of who's in net, the Penguins aren't getting saves. They're not getting saves, and they're not getting defense in front of them. The way I see it is that Leafs game was also infuriating in a lot of ways. First of all, you had the Leafs. You had the Leafs in the palm of your hand for quite a bit of that game. It felt like the Penguins were outplaying them, but just being let down by goaltending and just poor defense. I mean, letting in a goal in the last 0.1 seconds immediately. By the way, that means nothing once Raquel scored in the first 10 of the next period. Throwing that out there. That's
no. I mean, because otherwise Raquel's goal wouldn't be a tying goal. It would be a go-ahead goal, and the entire perception of the game changes.
But are the Penguins driving that hard to start off a third if they're tied or if they're wherever it is? Who knows? All I'm saying is I'm just trying to bag the Leafs a little bit. Let me do that. Let me have some fun here. I'm going to have a busy week, okay? I'm trying to bag the Leafs a bit because also it's the Leafs against one of the worst teams in the NHL. The Leafs should have ran away with it, and they didn't. They also just straight up don't look like a team that can win a playoff round. I'm just being honest. That being said, that was just an infuriating game for everyone involved. So sometimes when that happens, those forcible changes need to happen. And for what it's worth, as the Penguins enter deadline week, what do they have to lose? Bring Jarry up. Screw it. They have nothing left to really play for. It's the end of the road. I mean, they got a pity point out of it. Cool, I guess. But it's the end of the road. The Penguins have nothing left to lose. I mean, hey, if Jarry finds a game, maybe all of a sudden it is that mental rehab. It is that, all right, he's back. I'm back. Let's do it. Let's get back to what made me an all-star in the first place. 2-time all-star. Well-deserved.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I think I still would be a little surprised, and if I'm wrong, people can come back and clip this if they want. I don't care. I still would be a little surprised if Tristan Jarry plays, and if he plays, I'd be surprised if he plays more than one game before this trip is over and then gets sent back down. That's all right. That's where I believe they're at, and of course, I might be wrong, but at the same time, it's a gut feeling that the only reason they brought up Tristan Jarry is because they really don't care to have Tristan Jarry as a backup option in the AHL playoffs. They would much rather Kirk McDonald be able to look at it and say, do I want Larson or do I want Blomqvist? And I think that is exactly what they're doing with the trade deadline looming. Speaking of moves that happened for the Pittsburgh Penguins yesterday, another small one that is quite significant in my eyes. The Penguins sign an electrifying defenseman to his entry-level contract, and that defenseman is, the man of the year so far in the prospect system, and that is Finn Harding. Just turned 20 years old earlier this week. He actually signed his contract one day after his 20th birthday. The right-handed defenseman was a 7th-round pick of the Pittsburgh Penguins in this past year's draft, signs a 3-year ELC that carries an $855,000 cap hit at the NHL level. He's been absolutely lighting up the Ontario Hockey League this season. He's the assistant captain of the Brampton Steelheads, and he has 55 points in 59 games played, which ranks 5th among OHL defensemen. Horwat, what are your thoughts whenever you saw this come down the pike, that the Penguins have inked their 7th-round pick from last year to his 3-year ELC?
Getting a late-round pick to be that successful is huge. Hitting on, once you get past round 3, it gets iffy. You never know what these players are going to do. You never know what they're going to turn out to be. And this one seems to be turning out to be, bare minimum, a solid piece to look forward to kind of keep an eye on as the years go by. Again, I will say it's not a guarantee. I think the Penguins sort of proved that whenever Isaac Beliveau signed just before the trade deadline a couple years back, and he really hasn't made it out of Wheeling. But it is another professional player to keep an eye on. It is another face in the crowd of what seems to be a pretty solid prospect core. Again, just a name to keep in the back of your head that, hey, you know what? If and when he does make it, you have a ton of upside to look forward to, especially if these sort of statistical trends continue down the line. Is he a lefty or a righty, by the way? I forgot to...
He's a righty.
Ooh, that's fun. Good. Penguins need more righties in their system, right?
They got both Brunick and Harding in this last draft that are now looking both like pretty solid prospects.
Yeah, and that's the other part too, that they're building that defensive core for the future. Especially when it comes down to Erik Karlsson's probably just in his last year in Pittsburgh. They're going to need, at least at some point down the line, to replace that name. Same goes for Letang. Who knows if he'll finish off his contract that goes to 2028 in Pittsburgh. There's another name they'll have to sort of replace roster-wise. And when it comes to the right shots, that's why I was asking, they'll have those options for when it's time. Finn Harding can come up. You said Harrison Brunick. That's another right shot. I mean, they're building out that defensive core with young players that could be, like you mentioned at the opening, could be electric for this team moving forward. And they're young. They got plenty of hockey ahead of them. Great to see and exciting to see for the Penguins in general.
Yeah, now there's no guarantee as to why they signed him on that day. And again, it's going to make me sound like this entire episode I got tinfoil hat conspiracies going on. But to me, this feels like a slight sign. Again, no guarantee, but it feels like a slight sign that they might be wanting to bring him up from the OHL to the AHL and let him play some professional hockey next year. I think there is a solid chance that he gets a taste of AHL hockey this year once the OHL playoffs either come to an end or once the Brampton Steelheads get booted. They're right now in position to make the playoffs in the OHL, but the OHL playoffs start on March 27th. The AHL playoffs start on April 23rd. So there's a lot of runway from the start of the OHL playoffs to the beginning of the AHL playoffs. So if Brampton doesn't go on a run, and right now they're the 5th seed in the Eastern Conference, you could see Finn Harding come up and get that little bit of a taste of American Hockey League, action. And I think that is more guaranteed, but I also think you look at the way that the Penguins have handled their prospects. Look at all of the young prospects that they turned pro this year. Guys like Tristan Jarry, they brought over Ville Koivunen this year. They brought up Owen Pickering to make sure that he started the year at the American Hockey League level. It feels like the Penguins are valuing having these guys under their umbrella. Not to say that they don't trust Brampton and their ability to kind of grow and mold some of their prospects like Finn Harding and potentially somebody else they might select in the first round this year too. But I think that they want to have that American Hockey League team as their breeding ground for their next generation. I think Jason Spezza and Amanda Kessel have done a phenomenal job making the atmosphere in Wilkes-Barre that of young and up-and-coming superstars and a place where these guys can kind of mold together, because I understand there's a lot of excitement for guys like Rutger McGroarty and Ville Koivunen and Owen Pickering and Sergei Murashov. But I think part of this is, save for Murashov, because I think his ceiling is extremely high, a lot of these guys' ceilings are not star players. So what you're going to need going into that next generation is them to be able to be a team kind of like we see with Finland in any international tournament. The stars' power isn't there, but you need them to be greater than the sum of their parts. And the best way for them to do that is to get chemistry from a very young age. And it feels like that is just the way the Penguins want to build this thing. So to me, with Harding turning 20 earlier this week, signing his contract literally the day after, it feels like there's a chance, if he plays well throughout the remainder of this season and has a good summer, that the Penguins look at him and say, all right, it's time for you to come up and we're going to turn you pro and you're going to play in the AHL. I mean, different side, but there is going to be a spot on that blue line because we all imagine Owen Pickering is going to graduate from the AHL level next year. And maybe Jack St. Ivany is somebody else that graduates from the AHL level. So you need to have people backfilling those positions. And Finn Harding, with the year that he's having, is putting himself in prime position to be one of those players that gets to play on the blue line next year for Wilkes-Barre.
By all means, I agree with all of what you just said there, especially that the point of the Penguins building a fun winning culture at the AHL level. I mean, have you seen that video that they did, that little spotlight on these AHL? It looks like they're having fun. Normally, you don't get that sort of attention made to an organization's AHL team. They understand that it really is mostly a team of a bunch of kids that have a chance to do something great at the next level. They understand that it is a stepping stone, that the AHL, that Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins team is, obviously you're out there, you're trying to win, you're trying to better yourself, but it is a stepping stone for what should be something more in the very, very near future. And also they look like they're just having a ton of fun, which I feel like you can't often say about kids in the AHL, or at least maybe depending on. It's not something you can often say about the AHL, really. It's not the same taste of hockey that the NHL can provide, clearly. But again, these kids understand that they have brighter futures. They know what is ahead of them. And Owen Pickering got a big taste of it to start the season, and he'll be able to sort of have that opportunity to graduate soon. so will Rutger McGroarty very soon. They'll all have that opportunity to move on to bigger and better things, and just they're having a ton of fun. They're building that chemistry. Like you said, they're building that chemistry on and off the ice right away at such a young age in Wilkes-Barre Scranton. And then whenever they all finally do graduate to the NHL, it'll just carry over. It's going to be a fun team to watch. I can't tell you how good or bad it's going to be in a couple of years, but one thing's for certain, those kids will be tight, those kids will be close, and they will at least be fun to watch, it seems, right?
I mean, I have to agree. I mean, you were watching that vignette first and foremost. When it came out, I was like, oh, this is how bad the Penguins are. We sent the video crew to Wilkes-Barre because there's nothing good to shoot in southwestern Pennsylvania. But I also looked at it and I said, man, this is college. This is a bunch of kids cooking, playing video games, relaxing, and then going to play some hockey. I mean, a lot of these kids look at the AHL as a stepping stone. I mean, look at Rutger McGroarty. He is a player that the reason that he had some beef with Winnipeg, and again, that beef might be too harsh for the word, but the reason that he had some disagreements with Winnipeg is because he felt like he didn't need to go to the American Hockey League, that he thought that he was more ready than going to the American Hockey League. So yeah, it probably kind of took a toll on him whenever the Penguins said, you made the team out of camp. And then a couple weeks later, they said, we're actually going to send you down, and it's probably going to be for a little while here, Rutger. And I'm sure mentally you look at that and you're like, man, this sucks. Like I want to stay at the NHL level, but getting to the AHL level, understanding why you're there and understanding what you need to do while you're there, I think is something that the Penguins have done a really good job of. I'm not saying other AHL teams haven't, but I'm saying that it has been made very evident this year that they're kind of pressing all the right buttons at the American Hockey League level. And again, credit needs to go out to Jason Spezza, who's the general manager of that team, and Amanda Kessel, who's the AGM, and of course, Kyle Dubas, who oversees it all. But I think the Penguins, and specifically those three, have done a really good job of making sure there is a lot of focus and attention and care that is being given towards that team in Northeast Pennsylvania. And there's a lot of exciting things that are happening with them. Now, it is a huge week, as we started off the show saying, and there's going to be a lot of rumors. There's going to be potentially a good bit of moves because it is officially trade deadline week. It is the best week of the year for bad hockey teams. And Horwat, the Penguins are a very bad hockey team. You can either reshape or restock your organization in the next handful of days. The Penguins, they might look to do a little bit of both. Elliot Friedman of Sportsnet was on 32 Thoughts, the podcast, and he had a couple things to say about the Pittsburgh Penguins. He talked Erik Karlsson. He talked Buffalo Sabres and the Penguins potentially buying a young player off of the Sabres. And then he talked Noel Acciari. So I'll lay this out there for you, Horwat. Of those three, who do you want to talk about first? Because there's a lot to talk about.
Erik Karlsson, because that's probably the biggest one. It'll be the quickest one,
yeah,
for sure. But it's definitely the biggest name to get to and just the headline to knock out first.
And it's the one that they started off with, too, when they were talking about the Pittsburgh Penguins. Elliot Friedman said, quote, I do think we'll see Karlsson talk, but I don't know if I expect it until this summer, which, again, echoes a lot of what we've been saying on this show, that it is hard to get a Erik Karlsson deal done in a short amount of time. He was told, or not he was told, but he told Rob Rossi of The Athletic that he hasn't been asked to waive his no movement clause as of Sunday. So it feels like if the Penguins were going to make this deal before Friday, they would have at the very least been far enough down the road that Karlsson would have been made aware that there is a team on the other end. And I'm sure there's teams that are talking, but it doesn't feel like there's anything that's going to be able to get close enough for them to approach Erik Karlsson here in the next week, which makes a lot of sense because we mentioned it again. The Karlsson deal took almost a full calendar year from San Jose to Pittsburgh. It's not going to take 2 weeks from Pittsburgh to wherever goes next, especially after his play deteriorated since the last time he was traded.
Right. Josh Yohe, I think, put it in his recent update that there are a certain number of teams that Karlsson would waive his no move clause to go to. We don't know them. We're not going to know them. But if those teams come about, maybe something's possible, but nothing's going to get done that quickly. It's just not. We'll see what happens over the summer. That just seems like the more likely option. Cap going up, more time to sort of make the maneuvers, make the changes, and less pressure to sort of get it done under a certain deadline. So Yeah, I'd say everything makes more sense for the summer. Plus, the number goes down after bonuses get paid, after certain things get paid off to Erik Karlsson, making the total money of it just 11.5 over the next 2 years. So that's much more affordable for even if a smaller market team sort of comes out of the woodwork as a landing spot. It makes the money a lot more manageable. So summer seems just like the way easier time to do it. Plus now he'll have the rest of the season. Again, what do the Penguins have to lose? Take the reins off of him as well and let him run free. Let him do what he needs to do to be the best player he can be and get the Penguins a bigger return even.
Yeah, I mean, it's a simple fact of the Penguins have played 6 games since the Four Nations break. The first 3 were absolutely horrendous. The last 3 have been exciting. And part of that is, well, they haven't been playing good defense, but they've been playing a little bit better offense. I mean, at this point, what do you have to lose? Just have exciting hockey games and get people in the building because they're going to see a 6-5 hockey game. It is frustrating for anybody that likes structural hockey, but at the same time, you can't tell me that you didn't have fun watching that game on Sunday afternoon. It was frustrating, but it was fun. And I think that's what the Penguins need to lean into here to get people in the building for the last month of the season. But not to beat a dead horse, and we will talk about kind of the Sabres of it all and a little bit about Nola Chari, but outside of the fact that there's the money, there's the time that's kind of making this unlikely to happen before Friday, Erik Karlsson, even at his best, brings a lot of negatives along with a lot of positives. And I feel like teams that are trying to go for it right now, they're trying to avoid negatives as much as humanly possible. You want your trade deadline acquisition to be Marian Hossa, where he comes in and for that rest of the season, it is nothing but positives. You want that trade deadline acquisition to be, I'd say Jerome McGinley, but he was really just a power play specialist when he came in 2013. But you want that player to be overwhelmingly positive. If you bring on Karlsson, your net defensive ability is going to drop, and it's not going to drop a little bit. It's going to drop significantly unless you can put somebody that is a stout defensive defenseman that can make up for his deficiencies right next to him. So again, I don't want to bash on the guy too much, but if you bring him in during the deadline, that has to be a factor too. And a lot of contending teams are going to look at it and say, he'd be great, but what if it is the same exact thing as it is in Pittsburgh, where it just doesn't mesh well and we have to play him and we also have to suffer the consequences of he doesn't play great defense. So again, there's a lot of factors that go into this, but I think overwhelmingly the message that is being given to you by us is this is probably not going to happen this week. But keep your eyes open for this summer. That'll be interesting. Now, Friedman went on to talk about the Penguins bringing somebody in, or maybe several somebodies from the Buffalo Sabres organization. Quote, Pittsburgh has asked about some of Buffalo's young players like J.J. Peterka. That's a big price if it ever happens, but that guy has got Pittsburgh written all over him. Horwat, we have previously talked about Bowen Byram, who's at the top of a lot of trade boards. We've talked about Dylan Cozens, who's at the top of a lot of trade boards, but we never talked about J.J. Peterka, mainly because I don't think any of us thought that he could potentially be even on the trade block from the Buffalo Sabres. Of those 3, I like Peterka a lot, and I think he shoots to the top of the list. Do you agree?
I think so, yeah. And Peterka's a new addition, I think, from last week when it comes to Buffalo Sabres reaching the trade block. It's definitely a new face that I do enjoy the most, I think, out of those available players. There's a ton of names that Buffalo's looking to sell off. But J.J. Peterka just might have the most upside. I mean, he's still on a rookie deal at the moment. He is an RFA at the end of the season. But at 23 as a center, maybe that is the new second line center. Again, if the Penguins pull us off, it's a high price apparently, but if the Penguins decide to go this direction next season, figure out what to do with Malkin, move him to the side, bump him down to the third. You have a young face that can maybe take over those reins. Again, maybe it's not an immediate adjustment into that position, but, pushing his way into that spot. He's having a heck of a season right now with 47 points in 57 games. That's quite a bit for Buffalo. I think if they're willing to pay that price, that's a heck of a spot for Peterka to be in for next season.
Yeah, to me, Peterka immediately goes to the top of this list. I do like Bowen Byram. I do like Dylan Cozens a heck of a lot. And I think if you're looking for a two-way center, you're probably better off going after Dylan Cozens than you are JJ Peterka. But I think the upside is there a lot higher with JJ Peterka. He's 23 years old. Like you mentioned, the guy, you play almost any forward position. He had 28 goals and 50 points last season as a 22-year-old. And he's on pace for another 20-goal season and on pace to break that career high in points. I just smashed that career high in points. I believe you mentioned he had like 48 points, 47 points already. His career high is 50. So he is trending in the right direction despite playing on one of the worst teams in the NHL's Eastern Conference and in the NHL in general. And I mentioned it already. I like a lot of these guys in the AHL. I really like Rutger McGroarty. I really like Ville Koivunen. I really like Vasily Ponomarev. I really like Tristan Bros. Peterka has higher upside than pretty much all of them. McGroarty, you can have a conversation, but certainly the other three. Peterka is already doing it at the NHL level. He's proven that he's not just a guy that can play at this level, but can play top 6 minutes at this level. And that is what the Pittsburgh Penguins are looking for right now, is a young player to help take them into the next generation that has that pedigree already. That's the type of move that you trade one of your first-round picks for. Certainly the Rangers one, certainly not the Pittsburgh Penguins one. But that's the type of move that you start to have that conversation of, yeah, it would be nice to pick 1st and 15th, but everybody knows that after 5, this draft gets a little bit murky. This draft gets a little bit more, uncertain as far as what you're trying to grab at 10th, 11th, 15th, 14th, which is where if the Penguins get that pick, they will be sitting. The problem is, you look at that and you say, would you rather have a lottery ticket or would you rather use that and probably more to bring in a guy that's 23 years old, that has already put up 50 points in this league, that is destined to do it again this year and has shown to be a multi-20 point or 20 goal scorer when he's only 23 years old? I think that is the question that you have to wrestle with. But Peterka immediately becomes a better option than Nick Robertson. He immediately becomes a better option than Nils Hoglander. He immediately becomes a better option. I would say a better option than Brandt Clark. I like Brandt Clark, and he's a defenseman, so you have to judge it a little differently. But I think Peterka, the spot that he would fill for the Penguins, puts him immediately at the top of my list. And it might be recency bias because it's the most recent name I've heard. But you look at what he brings, and it is everything the Penguins need. And just like Elliot Friedman said, he has Pittsburgh written all over him because he is the perfect mold of what Kyle Dubas is looking for now and has been the entire season.
Absolutely. It's exactly the perfect choice. It's the perfect selection. And for what it's worth, when it comes to what you're sending to Buffalo, if need be, it might cost a first. And if you follow Emily Kaplan's way of thinking, depending on the order of operations here,
yeah,
you send Ricard Raquel out for a first-round pick to, she said, Utah, anywhere, get a first-round pick in return, suddenly you have another first-round pick to play with. So
yeah. It's starting to feel like double blackberries on the NHL video game. But at the same time, hey, we've seen stuff that's crazier before, and first-round picks have been tossed out like candy over this deadline period. So maybe.
Exactly. And we've seen Kyle Dubas work with 2 phones before. I mean, this is all working out into his favor. So
yeah,
if the order of operations is correct, yeah, sure, then you have that other first-round pick to play with. Utah's might be a bit better, but again, like I mentioned, Los Angeles, the LA Kings could use a guy like Ricard Raquel in their lineup. That could be very much a late round pick, depending how they do against Edmonton for the 4th straight year. But it's something to keep an eye on if that is the direction they decide to go in, and depending on the order that they decide to go in, because also part of you might still want to hold on to a second first-round pick for next season, because 2026 draft, even late first round, is still supposed to be pretty solid. Yeah. So, but then again, the Penguins have plenty of time to add other first-round picks to that. Brian Rust's trade protection is up after this season. Not saying they're trading him, but who knows how next season goes.
If you trade Erik Karlsson, you have to imagine that the first is very likely to be part of that deal.
Bare minimum, right?
Yeah. So, and here's the thing too. I know a lot of people are going to be like, we just got this first-round pick. We need to make the picks. We're a rebuilding team. Peterka's 23 years old. Yeah. And let's not forget, last year, the Penguins had zero first-round picks. Zero. And they still got Harrison Brunick. who everybody's extremely excited about. They still got Tanner Howe right after him, who everybody is excited about. And guess what? Who did we just talk about 15 minutes ago? A 7th-round pick in Finn Harding that has gone from, yeah, he's a 7th-round pick, it's worth taking a chance on him, to they're signing his ELC because there's a very likely chance he's already going to be at the American Hockey League level next year. Like, there is a chance because the Penguins went out, they scouted the right guy, they picked the right fit, and that player developed. So first-round picks aren't end-all be-alls. I'm not going to go to the opposite side of it because I've already bashed enough players that are first-round picks that didn't work for the Pittsburgh Penguins. But if you're telling me that trading away the New York Rangers' potential first-round pick that's either 14th, 15th, or 16th, and saying, well, instead of having somebody at 15 and somebody in the top 5, we're going to have, for instance sake, we're going to have Porter Martone and JJ Peterka, I think that is a huge win for the Pittsburgh Penguins. So, again, you have to be willing, especially when you're Kyle Dubas, who is rebuilding, but also understanding that he wants Sidney Crosby back in the playoffs before he's done. And part of that is you're going to have to trade away some of these assets that you've gathered, which they have a lot of them, and you're going to have to take some swings. Peterka, to me, is a swing worth taking, but we'll see how it plays out. If that is the name that ends up coming to Pittsburgh, and again, it was just Elliot Friedman saying Pittsburgh is asked about Buffalo's young players, and Peterka feels like a fit. Doesn't mean Peterka is in the conversation. It just means that Peterka matches what the Penguins want and could likely be a player that the Penguins have their eyes on. Whether or not Buffalo is willing to give up on him, that is a different question, and a question that we will not have the answer to unless this trade comes down.
Exactly. That's all it is right now. It's just a little speculation. It's a little connection. Is a little good fit. It's a perfect fit to, again, just kind of expand on, have more discussion about, and it's goofy season.
It is goofy season.
Except goofy season gets real quick in this exact week.
Yeah, you want to know goofy season? The third player that they talked about was Noel Acciari. I would be very surprised, and I understand. He has playoff experience. He does the little things, right? He blocks shots. He plays physically. He's a good team guy. But he hasn't been good this year, even in his role. Like, there's going to be people that say, excuse me, he's not good offensively. I don't care. I'd never expected him to be good offensively this year. But he's been bad at what he does. Like, yeah, he can block shots, but he looks slow. He's not good with the puck on his stick, and he's always a step behind the play, it feels like. Like, he's good on the penalty kill, and he's good in zone at blocking shots. Outside of that, he doesn't provide very much, and he's going to cost $2 million next year. So the fact that they even brought him up was kind of surprising to me. I didn't expect anybody to go out there and say, you know what, Noel Acciari. Now, maybe if it's, what did they get for Chad Ruhwedel last year? A conditional 7th? Maybe if it's the conditional 7th, the Penguins are able to offload him and open up $2 million plus a roster spot for somebody next year. But I would still be very surprised if somebody came out of the woodworks to give anything for Noel Acciari. Again, maybe a 7th, maybe a, whatever it's, player to be named later or whatever it is in
future
the NHL.
Considerations.
Yeah, future considerations. Player to be named later is baseball. But yeah, future considerations, maybe. But I don't see the Penguins getting anything of value in return, or very little value in return for Noel Acciari.
No, I mean, I think for what it's worth, the idea of Noel Acciari being Kyle Dubas's buddy, being that sort of, like, the tight connection, that was all last season. Why he wouldn't get moved last season. This time around, everyone on the roster outside of Crosby and Malkin are pretty much available. So that idea of Dubas isn't going to trade him because he likes him, that's out the window at least. So you have that possibility that gives a little leeway for Acciari to be moved. But again, you're right. With $2 million against the cap for the rest of the season and next season, at aged 33 right now, going to age 34, it's a tougher sell, especially when the play isn't there. The body is banged up, and you only have a certain number of teams you can talk to. It's not broad. It's not wide open like some of the other players that Kyle Dubas might be trying to move. You did add on that protection. So it's a little tougher. It's not impossible, but it's a little tougher. You have a little obstacle in the way. And at this point, yeah, you're not getting much in return. But hey, at this point, open up that $2 million if possible and fire him to the moon.
Yeah, I don't doubt the Penguins would pull the trigger if given the opportunity. I'm just not sure anybody's going to give them the opportunity.
Yeah, it's turned into, it's definitely gone from he's Kyle Dubas' buddy to who's going to take him.
Yeah. I mean, that same could be said about a lot of guys. Not Kyle Dubas' buddy, but who's going to take him. I mean, there's people that are trying to talk me into Tristan Jarry being on the block. I think, again, 31 other NHL general managers are going to look at Jarry and say, why on earth would I give you the free pass, Kyle Dubas? And I think the same exists for Ryan Graves, just especially at the deadline. Maybe more so in the summer, that door is cracked open, but I don't think it's open at all in the next 3 days. Do you have anything else to add before we take this one home and try to get it out before something happens, because it's deadline week, that makes this immediately outdated?
Don't worry, we got one more episode to talk trade deadline stuff.
And that one's going to be much more dangerous.
Yeah, we'll have much more of it Thursday. Who knows? Maybe moves will be made by then. I think Yoey did say the Penguins if they're going to make moves, they would probably do them today or tomorrow because of games out west. It's hard to get guys out there depending on who you're talking with. Mm-hmm. So we'll see. We may be coming to you with a Penguins team that's done making moves. We may be coming to you on Thursday with a team in the middle of making moves. I'll keep my eyes on Twitter, and we'll be ready to go. And it'll be a fun week. I'll probably be tired as hell on Thursday.
It's trade deadline week. Neither of us are going to get a lot of sleep, and I think that much is what we've learned over the last 5 years of doing this show and everything else that we do covering the NHL and the Pittsburgh Penguins. But that is going to do it for this episode of The Tip of the Ice-Burgh. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this one. Remember that you can find us on YouTube at Tip of the Ice-Burgh. Make sure that you like, share, and subscribe if you liked this video, or you can catch us anywhere you get your podcasts. We'll see you guys next time.